Thank you, Tim. As mentioned, it's great to have everybody here. As Tim mentioned, we are very fortunate to have Lee Mayberry on our women's basketball coaching staff, and Lee has seen a lot of basketball in his day, including playing against Michael Jordan. I think most of you know Lee is a Rogers High School graduate, won a state championship at Rogers, then played at Arkansas from 1988 to 1992, and then drafted in the first round of the NBA draft by Milwaukee. Played for the Bucks from 92 to 96 and Vancouver from 96 to 99. So when he played in the NBA, it was Jordan time. Jordan was at his prime, and Lee got to, being in the Central Division, the Bucks and the Bulls, Lee got to see plenty of Michael Jordan along the way. And for those of you who have seen The Last Dance on ESPN recently, a lot of this will make sense to you. And for those of you who have not seen it, should be very interesting as well. And we're not only going to talk about Jordan and Lee's experience playing against Michael, but also some ORU basketball, some Arkansas basketball, some women's basketball. So there'll be something for everybody. And as Tim said, just mention your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll do our best to get everybody in. All right, so Lee, welcome. I'm glad you could join us, first of all.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, let's just cut to the chase with Michael Jordan. Do you believe that he is the greatest basketball player to ever play?
Yes, I do. I remember, coming out of Arkansas and, getting drafted by Milwaukee, and we were in the same division as Chicago. So we would play them 3-4 times a year. And, wearing his shoes and just idolizing him as a collegiate athlete, to finally get to play against him was like a dream come true. And, I played with guys like some of you maybe remember Moses Malone. I played with Moses Malone as a rookie. Alvin Robinson was on my team in Milwaukee, and he was one of the best defensive players in that era as far as the NBA is concerned. And I remember thinking, going to play against Chicago that, man, I think Alvin can guard Jordan. And that was not the case. I think Jordan had close to 40 and didn't have to play the fourth quarter, and Alvin was already kicked out of the game.
Yeah, and people should know, and when you were drafted and became a member of the Bucks, you were playing right away. You had so many hundreds of consecutive games, a great number there, and you were playing in and out every night. And so it wasn't like, here comes Lee for a minute against Jordan. You put in your time against this guy every time you played the Bulls.
Yes, we did. And we played them, like I said, 3-4 times a year. So that was, a lot, especially being in the Eastern Conference Division and playing against those guys. And it was always fun. I mean, I know that, when you talk about a guy like Michael Jordan, ticket sales was always at a premium. All the stadiums was sold out. So it was always fun games and playing against those guys.
Now, be honest here. You got the Bulls coming up tomorrow night, let's say. When you knew it was Bulls time and you were going to have to stick Jordan, how was your preparation different for that game?
Well, I mean, I think, being a professional athlete, you're going to go and, you're going to play hard against them. You're going to give them all you got and do the best you can. I mean, there was no, I don't think, embarrassing moments as far as guarding this guy, because he pretty much destroyed everybody. So, you just go in and play hard and do the best you can.
The Pistons, who were also a team back then, a rival of the Bulls, they had something called the Jordan rules. They had a complete defense designed just for Michael Jordan that they tossed out when they played everybody else. Did the Bucks, and you specifically, did you have anything special about playing against the Bulls and Jordan that maybe didn't apply to other teams?
No, we did not. I mean, I think Detroit, with the roster that they had multiple All-Stars and some Hall of Fame guys on that roster, and they were competing for NBA championships. And, when I got to Milwaukee, we had a big draft class, and I mean, we were young and trying to, really identify ourselves in the NBA.
Absolutely. When you played the Bulls, just personally in your head, were you extra motivated knowing I got a chance to stick Jordan here? I got a lot of people watching this. You know, the team's defense maybe was the same, but you personally, did you elevate your game knowing that you had to play Jordan?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you knew that, the stadium was going to be sold out for one. I mean, most of your family and close friends and everybody always wanted tickets for that particular game. So you had, extra, motivation to kind of, play well against, at that time, you knew he was going to be one of the all-time greats. And, you would go out there and, give it your all and just try to make a name for yourself and identify yourself in the NBA.
You know, we talk about Jordan being the greatest to play ever. Can you be specific when you played against him, whether you're on the court, sitting on the bench, watching highlights, what made him so great, if you can make that somewhat specific?
Well, he was tough. He was physical. He was really aggressive on both ends of the floor. I mean, a lot of kids don't see the work that guys like that put in outside of the games, but you can just tell that his preparation as far as in the weight room, on the court, and just his mental aspect of how he took the basketball game was to another level. I mean, he had the body that was, he was 6'6", 200, 205, and could play multiple positions, could, do just about anything on the basketball court. And it showed.
What we've learned from watching this Jordan show, The Last Dance, is that, even though the kids wanted to be like Mike, not everybody liked Michael Jordan, not even people on his own team. Um, what did you think of the guy personally? As an opponent, I don't know if you ever had any exchanges on the floor or not, but from what you observed, where you observed it from, what did you think of him as a person? A likable guy?
I thought of him as a likable guy. I mean, I wasn't at their practices or anything, but from what I seen on that show, he probably could have been a little tough to play with. But you have guys like that. I mean, I played with a few guys like that would, get on their teammates, would demand certain things. I think, for him, and I think the way he was trying to portray it in the documentary, that he was just trying to motivate him, trying to get him better, trying to get him to his level. And you know, some guys can take it, some guys can't, but he seems that he did a pretty good job of it.
I'm going to ask you a serious question, and I want a serious answer from you, Lee, and I know you'll give it to us. Were you ever, as a pro athlete, everybody's confident, but when you had to stick Jordan, were you ever at all intimidated, even a little bit?
No, I was not. I think when you talk about a Michael Jordan, you know, back, the Gary Paytons, the Clyde Drexlers, the John Stocktons. I grew up idolizing Isaiah Thomas. That's why I wore number 11 in college, because Isaiah Thomas wore number 11. And
Sure.
I think that at that level, most of the pro athletes and most of the NBA guys just go out, and they've been doing it their whole lives, and they just go out and do what they do and play the way they've always played.
Understood. I'm going to step in now. I've got some more questions, but let's take some from the gallery and the chat. We've got one right here. It says, this is from Wes Leander. Lee, who were some of your favorite teammates in college and in the NBA?
I was in college. Me and Todd Day, both of us were McDonald's All-Americans. We came in at the same class at the University of Arkansas. And ironically, we both got drafted to the same team, the Milwaukee Bucks, in the 1992 draft.
Sure.
Todd was the 8th pick in the draft, and I was the 23rd pick in that draft. So we bonded and became pretty good friends because, of course, playing in college and then going on and playing in the NBA, we became pretty close.
Yeah, another teammate, Oliver Miller. You guys were Lethal Weapon 3 at Arkansas. That was a fantastic club.
Yes, and I mentioned Todd, but I still keep in touch with mostly all of my teammates. I talked to Big O a couple of weeks ago.
Is that right?
I I still keep in touch with Vin Baker was down here when the Gathering Place had its 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and um, I still keep in touch with Sharif Abdul Rahim and a lot of teammates that we still keep in touch from time to time, and it's like a fraternity of brotherhood, so to say.
Sure thing. I'm going to ask you another question now from the chat. And folks, everybody joining us now, feel free to submit your questions to the chat at the bottom. I'm not exactly the guy that you want to talk to about how to do things online, but I can tell you there's a little button that says chat. Click it, type your questions. This one is from John Harper. Lee, do you think MJ could have been a Hall of Famer in baseball, football, or golf if he had concentrated on those sports exclusively?
Um, I don't know. I mean, that's hard. It's because he didn't have a successful baseball career. I mean, so I'm gonna say no. He was a great basketball player, the best of all time, and I don't know if he could have. I doubt if he could have been one of those other greatest of all time in those other sports.
Let's talk more about some Arkansas, or are there some time in the pros? We'll get to Arkansas in a moment. Do you remember the very first time you had to face Jordan? I'm assuming you were a rookie coming out of Arkansas, Bucks Bulls. You get Jordan. What was that feeling like, if you can remember that?
It was good. I mean, you really want to, as a rookie, and that was the same game that Alvin started off with him, but you've got switches, and you're going to be
Sure.
matched up with Jordan at some point or another when you're on the perimeter. But I remember just trying to see if I could stop the guy. I mean, just concentrating on when he gets the ball, wanting him to go score or make a move to create his offense, just to see if I could stop him. And I never forget that. And it happened numerous of times, and he scored a lot of points.
All right. There's nobody here except you and me. Did you ever get posterized by him? Nobody's listening. What do you got?
Never got posterized by him. I never got posterized by him. I think he hit that fadeaway on me a couple times though.
You and a lot of other people. Did you ever have a really good offensive? Because Jordan was a great defensive player too. A lot of people don't think of that. They think of his dunks. But did you ever get off offensively against him and feel really good about yourself?
Well, there was one game I scored double figures against Chicago,
All right.
but never just like my high school or college days where you would go off with them 30 and 40-point nights.
Wasn't quite as easy when Jordan was sticking you, right? Do you think, I mean, people know of him as a great defensive player, but are you surprised that everybody just thinks of his dunks and his great offense and all that, but describe him as a defensive player?
Well, he was aggressive. I mean, I think with guys like Jordan, they can get away with a little bit more than your average, just your Lee Mayberrys of the NBA could get away with.
Uh-huh.
But he would really be aggressive as far as kind of grabbing, kind of holding, pushing off, and I mean the great defensive players do. All of the great defensive players are able to do that and get away with it. So I wasn't surprised with how well he defended because he had that mentality.
And complaining to the referee, I'm assuming, did no good at all.
No good at all. No good at all. Especially with those Chicago teams back then. They
Right.
were really good and winning, 60 plus games a year.
We'll go to some chat here in just a moment, but let me ask you this. When you're on the bench watching, you're out for the time and Jordan's out there just lighting it up. Did you ever catch yourself being a fan, just sitting there on the bench going, I can't believe this guy?
Yeah, you would. I think, every NBA player that has played against Michael Jordan would, being on the bench and watching him do some of the things that he's doing, you can catch yourself being a fan because, you know, this is a guy who, in my era, kind of grew up watching and seeing him doing some of the things that he done after North Carolina and watching that fadeaway and going to the basket, like you said, posterizing somebody. We would always give teammates a hard time about it after games.
Better the other guy though than you, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Lee was always smarter than that. If he knew he was on the run, he'd just let him go right by him.
Get out of the way. Yep. Don't get on that poster. Don't get in that range. We've got some chat questions now, some more chat questions to share with you, Lee. This is from Mike Carter. How good was Big Country at Vancouver, and how was he as a teammate?
Big Country was a great teammate, super nice guy. We are still friends to this day. Big Country was Big Country. I mean, Big Country drove a pickup truck when everybody else was driving BMWs and Mercedes. Big Country would pull up in the lot with his pickup truck. I mean, he was, fun to be around. He was a nice guy and well respected around the NBA.
Very good. We've got some more chat questions. We're kind of all over the board. Some of these are very interesting. Let's talk a little weather. How did you like the cold winters in Milwaukee and Chicago, especially the wind coming off Lake Michigan? Let's talk weather first, then we'll move to the second part of that question. What about that cold Milwaukee?
It got cold, but being in Milwaukee, you would kind of get used to it. I think sometimes it was pretty when we would get all that snow and everything snowed in, and I mean, I think the wind chill up there got to like -76 one year. I was there. That was the wind chill, and it got very cold, but I really enjoyed my time in Milwaukee. I mean,
Excellent.
Vancouver, it kind of rained every day. I mean,
Yeah.
but then once the rain goes away, the sun comes out, the grass is green, and it was beautiful. I really enjoyed my time in Vancouver also. All of my summers was spent in Tulsa. I always came home and took those 2-3 months here in Tulsa and worked out with guys like Richard Dumas and Tracy Moore and Shea Seals and some of those guys before we went back and played.
Sure. The second part of that question from Don Fallon is, what was your favorite NBA arena to play in?
My favorite NBA arena to play in was it had to be Madison Square Garden. I mean,
Sure.
the Garden was special. It was like it reminded me of a theater where it was dark when you would look out into the bleachers and the stands or whatever. I mean, and then it was just the show was on the court. It was always unique to to be getting down to Madison Square Garden and seeing all the people and being in New York City.
A lot of celebrities too, right?
A lot of celebrities always came to the Knicks games.
Not so much anymore. Charles Scott, question. Lee, when you were part of the great teams, what have you learned about making a team great, and what lessons from that teamwork are you teaching your players at ORU?
Well, I think for one, it's the work ethic and the consistency of always being in the gym and working on your game. I mean, whether it's something you're good at, whether it's something you're not good at. I mean, you can always improve your game with the consistency that the time that you put in. Along with motivating your teammates, encouraging them and showing it on the court, not just talking about it, but going out on the court each and every night, whether it's practice, whether it's the games, and proving that you're not just talking, you're backing it up by your actions.
Absolutely. And those maybe who have joined us late, Lee is an assistant coach with our ORU women's basketball team. And Lee, there are a lot of new players on that team. We're going to get back to the NBA in a minute, but I just got to ask this. There's more than 10 new players on the team. That's you're going to have your hands full this year, aren't you? Getting all these new players in and acclimated.
Yeah, we will. I think, with that, there's a lot of girls that's anxious to come in and really, make a name for themselves and show that, they can play on the Division I level and try to bring some Summit League championships and maybe the NCAA tournament aboard, because that's been missing for a while. And that's kind of what myself and Kyron and Moses and Misty has been, trying to, preach to them that, we're looking for championships, Summit League championships out of this group.
Excellent. We'll get back to that in just a minute. I'm going to take a few more questions from the chat just so I can keep up, because they're coming in pretty good here. Mark Stearns wants to know, do you keep up? Well, you talked about this a little bit, maybe extend on this. Do you keep up with your Arkansas teammates? You had mentioned that. He had a nice conversation with Marvin Delph a few years ago. So, do you just talk on the phone, or do you all have actual Arkansas alumni events? How close are you with some of those guys?
Well, we talk on the phone, but there's always, whether it's a football game that you go back to at Arkansas or a basketball game. When I was on the staff with the Razorbacks on the men's basketball team, I kept up with a lot of guys, and I always tried to get those guys to come over to whether it was a football game or a basketball game or something like that. I mean, I think all of us kind of keep in touch with Coach Richardson. He's doing well over there. He's still in Arkansas. It's we're always, and if you don't keep up with someone, you always hear about someone else through another teammate, and kind of just keep tabs on everybody.
Let's talk some more basketball. What is different about the NBA today? It's a whole different deal than it was back when you played in the 90s, correct?
Yes, I think today, for instance, my rookie year, when I first got into the NBA, we didn't charter a lot of flights. We flew commercial and went through the airport. A few, and there was only 12 first class seats, so that went to priority. I mean, of course, Moses Malone was probably 15 years at that time, so he would definitely have a first class seat. And then they would go by just how many years you have played. And of course, I was a rookie, and I would a lot of times be put in the back with everybody else. But that's no longer. I mean, everybody has their own plane. Everybody charters. When I think when I first came into the league, also, you would do those, and they still do. They still do the West Coast swing, where if you go to LA, you're gonna play the Lakers, the Clippers, and maybe Golden State before you come back, or the Texas Triangle, where you would go play Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. I know Oklahoma City is included in that now. I mean, I think hit up a couple of those before they go back home. But I think a lot of stuff I think we played a lot back then, and I think even now guys, train a lot, and they're big into the weights and big into the conditioning and strength and agility stuff. When I think we just rolled out the basketball and we just played a lot of basketball.
Sure. Well, specifically, what about the style of play? You talked a lot about all the hand checking. Gosh knows the Pistons were clobbering people during their couple of years, and the Bulls were tough on defense. How do you see the style of play in the NBA now different than it was back in the 90s?
Well, it's definitely not as physical as it was back in the 90s. I know even back, playing on those Nolan Richardson coach teams where there was no fouls in practice. I mean, we would all, it was aggressive. There was a lot of reaching, a lot of grabbing. And I think that kind of prepared and myself as far as to go and play in the NBA back in those days. The NBA now, and I'm not saying they're soft, but some of the hand checking fouls and some of the fouls when you get in the lane were not called back then, and they are now. I mean, James Harden shoots 20 free throws a game now, and
yes,
that would not have happened back in the early 90s.
All right, the old timers in the group love to say, in my day, Bill Russell was the greatest player. Wilt Chamberlain was the greatest player. Talk about Michael. Go back to Michael Jordan now. How does he He's the greatest ever, but now you've got LeBron James, more recently Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant. Do any of those guys even come close to touching Michael Jordan, or is that a pretty good fivesome and they're all somewhat close?
Now, I think they're all somewhat close. I mean, to me, I rank Michael Jordan above everybody else in my era because, I played against him so much and grew up watching him, play. I mean, I played against Kobe also, and I'm a big Kobe fan. And I think, if you're gonna say Jordan is one, Kobe is 1A, LeBron
Really?
is 1B. I mean, they're all right up there to me. They're all great players, and I think, you can argue about it all day. Who's better out of Wilt? Who's better out of Kobe? Who's better out of LeBron? I mean, it's a good argument, and I won't argue with you about it because all of those guys are great.
Yeah, not to mention Magic and Larry Bird. I mean, you've got a pretty tight dozen there that you could shuffle around, but you still say no matter what, Jordan is number one.
No matter what, Jordan is number one in my book.
All right, let's take a look at some more chat questions. Um, this is from Jarrett Hardwick. Something about Kyron. I'm not sure what question that is. I'm going to skip ahead to Michael Hairston. Michael wants to know, Lee, was MJ's hand checking and guiding useful to use against him? Does that make sense?
MJ's say the question again.
Yeah, was MJ's hand checking and guiding useful to use against him? Like he's hand checking you. Could you play that somehow against him? Could it work against him?
No, MJ has some strong hands, and that was one of the reasons he was such a great defender because he got away with, he get those big hands on you and those arms, and he can kind of guide you to where he wants you to go, and that's tough to get around.
Michael, good question. There's a couple others here. This is a good one. How about the cultural influence, the long shorts back then, his bald head, his commercial endorsements, his shoes? That whole thing was just a whole different deal that Jordan brought in, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And like I said, especially when, how he came into the league and really, took the league by storm and then being able to get his own shoe. I mean,
yes,
you had, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson that, wore Converse, but they didn't have their own shoe, and that with all of the other things. I mean, Jordan was Jordan. He's in a different class.
Well, I appreciate everybody who is submitting these questions. Want to make sure everybody gets included. Another question from Tim Johnson, one of our own. What was it like playing for Nolan Richardson? How did he recruit you? Talk about the whole Nolan experience from the first time he laid eyes on you to actually playing from him.
Well, Coach Richardson initially I don't think was going to recruit me because he felt like, well, first of all, my sister, Kim, was married to the late Nolan Richardson III. And so Coach Richardson was like family when he was here in Tulsa coaching the Hurricanes. I knew him before, he went over to Arkansas because his son was married to my sister. And initially he wasn't going to recruit me. He told me he wasn't going to recruit me because he was under the pressure of, me being, because all of my teammates at Arkansas used to say I was his son. I mean, he didn't get son because they knew the connection there. But to make a long story short, he recruited me. I really wanted to go to OU though. I mean, I used to go to the OU football games, and I was pretty good in high school, and I wanted to play right away. And I felt like Arkansas was that place. I mean, OU still had Mookie Blaylock there, and I mean, I felt like I can go to Arkansas and play right away, and especially having the relationship with Coach Richardson, of course, kind of took that over the top. And me and Coach Richardson still talk to this day, and he's always been tough on all of his players. I mean, he would get in your face. I have seen I have seen Coach Richardson. We had a guy named Mario Credit on our team from Kansas City, and I was a freshman. And Coach had got on to Mario, and Mario had mumbled something up under his mouth, and Coach
Uh-oh.
Richardson walked up to Mario right in his face, chest to chest. And Coach Richardson actually balled up his fist and said, "If you say something else, I'll knock your teeth out." And that he didn't have to worry about me bad mouthing or talking back to him from that point on.
Yes, and I bet Nolan could have done it too. That would have been a scary deal. Um, Talk about Nolan. This is the second part of Tim's question. We'll move on. You talked about how he recruited you. Why was he so successful in recruiting so many great players?
Well, I think that Coach Richardson just being, he felt like one of your uncles or one of your dads. I mean, he would come into your house or come to your game with his cowboy boots on and an old shirt, buttoned up shirt. I mean, you just felt close to him. You felt like you could build that relationship where you could trust him. And I think that was a lot of that was he would tell you about his upbringing and where he come from. And I mean it was that his situation was that to a lot of guys he recruited.
Very open, sure. Lawrence Lane wants to know, how would Michael Jordan stack up against today's players? So now we got Michael versus LeBron and friends in today's NBA.
Well, of course, like I just said earlier, I'm taking Michael Jordan over anybody. So I think Michael Jordan would do the same thing he did back in the early 90s. He would do it in 2020.
Right. So his game wouldn't be any different. He would just flat out dominate, huh?
I
In
think
all
so.
facets.
I think so. I think when you've got, like I say, LeBron is flat out dominating. Kobe flat out dominated. I mean, I just think that, guys like that, you take LeBron back to those 90s eras, and I think he can flat out dominate also. I mean, regardless
Yes.
of, how much, I just think those guys are good. And when you're good like that, you're good.
We'll hop back in the chat here in a second. Talking more about The Last Dance. They showed a side of Jordan that not a lot of people knew. Obviously on the court, tremendous player, difficult teammate. But behind that guy, I don't think he ever slept. The things he did off, enjoyed playing cards, doing all that kind of stuff. Just a very multifaceted guy. Did any of that surprise you, or did he have a reputation of just being like the Energizer Bunny in the NBA, just always doing something and always up to something?
Well, I think there was a lot of guys back then that old saying that would burn the candle on both ends and
Yes.
go out and perform. I have played with guys that I have seen go out all night, we on the road, go out all night, come back in the wee hours of the morning, go to shoot around, go take a nap after shoot around, and still go get 20 that night. So
Wow.
some guys can, some guys can't.
Michael Jordan now is with the Wizards. Or no, I'm sorry, he's with the Carolina team. Are you surprised that it hasn't been as successful for him in the front office as it was for him? I mean, never not to be as successful as a player because he was the greatest ever, but things haven't gone too well for him as an executive. The teams haven't been terribly good. The Hornets.
I'm not really surprised because for one, that's a business, and a lot of guys. Jordan is known not to really want to pay guys, for one.
Okay.
And when you talk about Charlotte, you've got the LAs, the New Yorks, Charlotte is kind of considered one of the homiest cities in the NBA. And they're going to have to draft right and do it the way. I think Oklahoma City drafts good. They make good trades, and it's a market like Charlotte, but I think Oklahoma City has done it a lot better.
And some would argue that Jordan was such a great player, and this applies to a lot of great players, not all of them, that their expectation level of others is so high because of how they were that they get frustrated, and everyone's not going to be as great about everything as they were, and the frustrations mounts, and things don't always work so well front office wise. It's not like playing the game.
Well, I think like Larry Bird did a good job with the Pacers when he was in
He
the
did.
he was driven that kind of way. I I I think it's all about, eyeing those trades, eyeing that draft, and doing it that way. Whether you're driven or not, you've gotta have that eye, and you've gotta make the right things happen.
Absolutely. Let's go back to our chat. Travis Whipple wants to know um, the transition from a player to now a coach. You're an assistant coach with the ORU women's basketball team. Obviously, you were a tremendous player at the collegiate and the pro level. How about that transition from player to now coach? You need a little more patience in your pocket, don't you?
You do need a little bit more patience in your pockets, but I think too that after my playing days, whether it was with my kids or someone else's kids, as far as training them and trying to coach the little AAU teams and things like that, and you just kind of like reach back and teach them what you was taught, and kind of train them the way you were trained, and pick up some things that others are doing, throw away some things that you didn't like, and attack it at that standpoint.
Bobby Bear he asked a question that you briefly talked about how Jordan could play golf in the day, do other things at night, and still be fresh as a daisy for basketball. But then Bobby wants to know, he ranks the original Grizzlies jerseys for ESPN as the 24th best of all time. Do you think those Grizzlies jerseys should be higher than 24th all time? They were pretty cool.
I thought so too. I think the Grizzlies had some sweet unis back in those days with the big Grizzlies going across, and especially the color. The color was nice. Um,
Teal.
I think for someone like Jordan though, he got plenty of rest. I think, nowadays, and even back then, you would have massage therapists after the game if you wanted a massage, or after practice, and you had plenty enough time to relax, because there was no classes, there wasn't a lot going on, and you strictly concentrated on basketball and your health.
And Bobby also wants to know who your favorite NBA team is these days.
I like the Oklahoma City Thunder.
All
I
right.
like the Thunder.
Very good. John Harper says, Lee, you see a lot of high school players in Tulsa and Oklahoma that what would you advise junior high and high school coaches? What would you advise them to develop Division I and potential NBA players? So what would you tell a high school player he or she needs to do to get their kids to Division I type level?
Well, I like the skill set. I feel like the dribbling, passing, shooting, and being able to, dribble with your left hand, pick up the ball and make passes with your left hand, pick it up and make it pass with your right hand. I mean, being able to go finish a layup with your left hand just like you can your right hand if you're right-handed. Just big on skill, being able to handle the ball, being able to, see the floor, obviously shoot the ball. Those are the skill set. Skill set to me can get you by even when you may not be as tough as someone else, or may not be as physical as someone else. But if you're skilled, that can really help you go a long way.
Excellent. Kyron, one of our assistant coaches, Kyron wants to know, all right, Lee, this is truth serum time again. All right. Some people I can see have already seen the chat. They're smiling about the question. All right, Lee, you're 1-1 against Jordan to 11. Do you score a point? That is Kyron asking that question. Do you even score a point?
I think I get a point. I don't know how many points I get, but I think I get a point.
You get a point out of it. Okay, that's fair and honest there. Mike Carter wants to know, do you get frustrated seeing players with talent but not willing to work to develop that talent?
That is frustrating. I mean, and there's a lot of it, and that goes back to what I was talking about as skill, some skill stuff. I mean, you got guys and girls that's physically, let's just take a 6'8" guy, for instance, that could run and jump out of the gym, but can't dribble with his left hand and can't make it out outside the lane. I mean, a lot of that is, the work ethic and getting in the gym and really, honing those skills. But yeah, that is frustrating. There's a lot of that going on.
We'll get back to the chat in a minute. A little bit about what you're doing these days, again, as an assistant with ORU women's basketball. I asked you this last year at our banquet. Now you're coaching the ladies. You got to do it a little differently, don't you? And what is it like coaching ladies? I understand they're a lot more receptive. I mean, just the difference between coaching guys and coaching ladies.
The ladies are a lot more receptive. I think most of the ladies, most of them have the skill set. I mean, because they can't play above the rim like the guys. And I mean, even with, I have 5 daughters, and I try to make sure that all of them can really dribble, they can shoot the ball, and just, and they all are probably 5'6", 5'7", but they were skilled, and I think that's what kind of got them over. And I think a lot of ladies are skilled, and that equates to being a good basketball player.
Go back to the chat. Tim Johnson wants, we're going off on a little trail here, but let's do it just for fun. Now it's Kyron versus Jordan. So you give this one back. Kyron Stokes versus Jordan. Does Kyron not only not get a point, does Kyron even get a shot off?
I don't think so, because he shoots it kind of low, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get one off against Jordan. I got mine a little higher.
I tend to agree. Another listener, this is David Bishop, I believe. What does Moses Ihambe, former ORU men's player, now with the women's staff, with you and Kyron on the bench there, what does he add to your coaching staff?
Moses adds, I think Moses just adds a lot of knowledge as far as him just finishing playing. Moses, like Kyron, can still get out there and show the girls and a little something. I mean, Moses was a great shooter. I remember seeing Moses. I was in Vegas. I was scouting for the Golden State Warriors at the time, and he was I forget which NBA team he was trying out for, but he had a good summer league, and I mean, he knows what it takes to play at this level, and I think he will bring a great deal of knowledge as far as developing these girls.
You guys will be fun to work with. Misty Cousin leading the charge, and you guys all contributing. Should be a great team and a lot of fun to watch. I'm going to hop back to the NBA. This is just kind of a random, big-time, open, wide question. What is the craziest Michael Jordan story you have?
The craziest Michael Jordan story.
Maybe it's something you heard about when you were a player. You may not have seen it, but you heard this and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And where are you? Just check.
I really don't have a crazy Michael Jordan story. Nothing crazy.
But a great teammate, even though a tough teammate, certainly. I'm going to go over to Madeline Manning Mims' question. What are your plans to successfully take ORU to a big season once this is a good point, Madeline. She talked about the coronavirus. That could be a factor, hopefully not in games, but certainly in preparation as we lead up to this thing. I mean, you'll have to consider that, but what, if any, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, what you guys know you're going to have to negotiate that, right? At some point, somehow, some way, and will that affect getting the ladies ready?
Well, I think that, we'll definitely follow all of the CDC guidelines, and we're going to be able to get a chance to work with some of these girls in small groups over the summer. And like I have said earlier, I think the skill aspect of it and the skill set will go a long way. And I think throughout the summer, that's forcing guys and girls to really work on a skill set. I mean, you just can't go and play where there's no 1-on-1 or there's no 2-on-2 and even 5-on-5 here, probably over the next month or so. So just to being able to get in there and work on some of the things that you're not good at and get better at some of the things that you definitely have in your game is going to be helpful.
Well, Lee, we certainly wish you and ORU best of luck this season, not only negotiating other teams, but also the coronavirus. And we know everyone will be safe based on ORU standards and college basketball standards for that point. We appreciate all of you who've joined us today. Thank you for the great chat questions. And Lee, thanks for spending some time talking about not only Arkansas, and ORU, and Michael Jordan. So we will go ahead and wrap things up. It's been almost an hour. And John Harper, we'll ask you to pray us out if you would.
Mute. Thank you, dear God, again for your blessings to us. Thank you for Lee and for his family and for his influence, for the blessing that you've made him to the people he touched. We ask, Jesus, that you would just continue to anoint him with your Holy Spirit as he coaches and as he leads and he mentors these young ladies. And the influence he has in this city. Thank you for what we can do to support him. I pray that you would always have us rally around him and do what we can do. Thank you for your love to us, Jesus. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Lee, very much. And we will do this, all of you, for joining us today. Thank you so much. We thank Lee. We thank everybody. And we will do this again soon. We'll find another celebrity guest and make it fun. Thank you all.